Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to another international national anthem reaction video. Where today, ladies and gentlemen, we travel not too far away from China as we go straight to sort of almost like the end of East Asia towards slightly southeast. So we go all the way straight to the Oceanics once again, specifically the nation of Indonesia, which, among other things, contains approximately 17,000 islands. And it also shares a lot of its territory with Papua New Guinea, which we have covered previously on this channel. And when two whole nations have a sprawling amount of islands between them, you know that sort of thing has probably led to many conflicts over the years. Possibly, again, this is something that I can only ever adhere to, because the only thing I can suggest on the top of my mind is the fact that there are some interesting news stories I heard about Indonesia that probably maybe the entire nation would just become like thousands of little small islands because of stories like these about Jakarta, Indonesia's capital city, is apparently sinking. Now, I'm actually going to just check a little bit of this out to see exactly what it is. So if you're not a fan of National Geographic or Disney, just look away now. So Indonesia has grand plans for Jakarta, a new capital on Borneo, a giant bird-shaped seawall to protect Jakarta itself, but already doesn't solve the underlying problem nearly 2 years ago. And I'm not going to lie, ladies and gentlemen, quite a lot of Jakarta kind of looks like it's starting to sink somehow. I don't know if it's just the contrast of all of these buildings surrounding a very tightly, very poor slum part of like the city. But again, it looks as if it's just like it's ready to sink at any moment. Like, what on earth is going on here? So, apart from the narrow, unpaved road, the 2-meter high concrete coastal wall, really only 2 meters high, literally in typhoon season, that is just that wall is going to come down. The coastal wall is the only thing that separates Shashemi's small restaurant in North Jakarta from the sea. Her family depends on that wall. Growing up here in Murabora neighborhood in the 80s and 90s, Shamay used to play on the beach in front of her house. But by the 2000s, the beach had disappeared and the sea frequently inundated the neighborhood. Yeah, and that's climate change does this sort of thing, ladies and gentlemen, and even to nations like Bangladesh, which is incredibly flat. These the sorts of things that will cause more flooding, and it means crops will fail and prices of things will start to skyrocket. If not, people start dying very slowly, but in very auspicious manners. In 2002, the government built the coastal wall to give the residents peace of mind and time, a respite from the steady sinking of the land under the city and the steady rising of the sea. Respite. I don't think I can ever recall at one point any government saying respite is something they're going to be given. It's like you can't even forget 1 minute thinking that this is going to be a solution to the problem. It just gets worse, ladies and gentlemen, if it's not solved or dealt with more than just a 2-meter high wall. The wall proved to be no match for the worst floods in Jakarta's modern history in 2007. Driven by a storm coming off the Java Sea and torrential rains, the floods claimed 80 lives around the city and caused hundreds and millions of pounds of damage. In Moroboro, the storm surge collapsed the wall and the sea flooded Shashemi's house. The water reached more than 1 meter, she recalls. My father almost died after being swept by the current. He survived after holding onto a doorframe. He's still traumatized. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is in 2020, where residents of Pest and Graham in West Jakarta wait out for the 2020 flood on the second floor. The flood caused an estimated £57 million in damages. And just exactly how is this like? Is this like really what? Is this? I don't know if it's just down to Indonesia's like. I don't know if it's just down to not being economically the richest country in the world, but are you really trying to tell me that? Well, we could talk about Metang at any other point, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, and their homes easily could be submerged underwater. Almost up to the fourth floor. Some of these buildings could be underwater in 20 years, and by abandoning its capital city to save it. Exactly. This is this. I'm sorry. I know this is going to sound like a really strange, barbaric thing to say, but just looking at this, you've got to think that Jakarta is going down. And as you can also see as well, is that Indonesia is to move capital from Jakarta to East Kalimantan. So they're just going to abandon it. Really? Why would they? And then of course you get sites like these, just thousands of layers of plastic just littered all over. So I kind of just wanted to, and also there's stories like these, which is the world's Jakarta is the world's most polluted city. Blame the dry season vehicles for the grey skies. So I can't imagine even Jakarta is just sort of, however, it's a city that is basically dying. And I say dying as in it's just going to be left to rot. And yet somehow I get the impression that actually there probably would have been a lot of people who would have been ready to save it, perhaps, but how do you even know where to begin if the government are just ready to get rid of it and just let it sink? But then what happens if Menteng sinks, or what happens if the rest of the nation sinks? You can't just abandon stuff like this. But and again, it's almost one of the things where I say, even going through these sanctuaries and temples and exploring the rest of the cities almost seems like a foregone conclusion. Not because they are not without their beauty or anything like that, but after reading that whole stint about Jakarta just being left to rot, basically, which is how can the rest of Britain, or even the rest of Indonesia, or the rest of the Oceanics sleep at night knowing that something like that is happening? Because it might not be today, it might not be in 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, but that's well, I don't like to use the word too often, but that's pretty fucked up. And yeah, I know, it's almost, I don't even really know what to say next. I mean, yes, I was about to go straight into their national anthem, but I'm almost thinking to the side of what on earth can you say now after hearing of things like that? But I do still think, however, ladies and gentlemen, that I think I kind of wanted to do it anyway, because again, that's sort of part and parcel what this channel was sort of, we wanted to check out more music from around the world. But this is also maybe one of those times where honestly, let's just do it. Let's do it anyway. I'm looking forward to it anyway, because you never know what you're going to get in some of these, and just this sort of encapsulates something I wanted to cover, like a modern day crisis. So please rise, ladies and gentlemen, for the national anthem of Indonesia.
untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
I like that, ladies and gentlemen, I must admit. But again, I don't know whether it's just because of what we've just talked about with Jakarta, about how can you describe it as your nation and homeland, and your homeland is about to sink? And long live my land, long live my state, my nation, my people entirely. Some people's homes and land is literally about to go underwater. Build its soul, build its body, build a higher wall, build. Just get the people out of there. Do something about it. I know. Again, it's really strange how to we go from a very chirpy, sing-song national anthem in Indonesia rules, and yet again, when you uncover things like this, then what use is there in a phrase like build its soul, build its body for great Indonesia, when great Indonesia is about to be left to go underwater, when it's left to be polluted? How on earth, how do you not only how do you justify these things, but also, and this is the thing when we cover things like third world nations, national anthems on these channels, is it because the standard of life is so poor, or is it because the resources for life are dearer than the necessities of life for every citizen? Or is it through things like exploitation that prevents the standard of life of anything improving? So therefore the standard has to be so low that it only goes to as high as about 2 meters. A 2-meter wall. Are they that's gotta be at least before the earthquake and tsunami in Japan in 2011, at least the Japanese were confident and competent in building anti-tsunami and anti-typhoon level of barricades. Yes, they were destroyed, but that was owing to the magnitude and the absolute scale of destruction that the earthquake and tsunami caused. Though again, whether you want to say things through national geography and owing to how big some natural disasters can affect other parts of the world in tandem, your guess is as good as mine. But I will say, I hope the people of Indonesia are sort of okay. That's all I've got to say, especially for the people of Jakarta, because in a situation like that is pretty dire, all things considered, and I hope everybody is okay. If this video achieves anything, it's to hope them know that they're hopefully okay, and to maybe even take the fight to actually build a higher wall or a better standard of living. Make of that what you will. So anyway, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this reaction video to the national anthem of Indonesia, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.